Good evening, my friends. This is the Grimflayer. Hope you're all doing very well tonight. Playing some more Dark Confidant Golgari in Modern for you, and we're going to get right into the game, but just a quick announcement first. I am going to be making a video possibly tomorrow, should be Sunday at the latest, so look for it sometime over this weekend, where I am just going to have compiled a list of kind of all of the potential things that we can do with this channel, whether it be enhancements to the Patreon reward tiers, whether it be, I know that my sideboarding techs are missed by many. Some people want me to go back to how I used to do things with a really in-depth sideboard tech in every video, basically, at least for matchups we haven't covered yet. Some people would think it's fine if I just do like a quick fly-by sideboarding, you know, right as we start game 2. Some people are fine as is. Some people have said I should put the sideboard plan in the description and not bother talking about it. So I have always said that I will listen to feedback about how to operate this channel, and I'm going to try to compile a list of basically every suggestion that we've had so far. Another one, you know, somebody has suggested a Discord for Patreon supporters. That might be cool. So I'm going to kind of throw all the ideas out there. I'm going to set them up in like maybe a yes, no, or indifferent, you know, multiple choice answer. And I'm going to make a video where everybody can vote in the comments below. So just wanted to, you know, put that bug in everyone's ear, so keep an eye out for that video coming up soon. In this video here, I'm going to try out just a quick fly-by sideboard to see how people like that. So, without further ado, let's play some Golgari. In a blind game 1, this hand is pretty great. We've got 2 discard spells, which is always awesome when we don't know what we're up against. You know, that's our form of interaction that's most likely to be good in any given matchup. We also are in pretty good shape even beyond that. If they do play to the board, we've got some answers to some things. And we have a threat that we do need to get down into play with a 3rd mana source, but this hand is a solid keep in a blind game 1, and also being on the play is potentially going to be nice for us as well. So not much to do here, but open with Swamp into Inquisition. And we see that our opponent is playing Runaway Red. So this is a new deck that is fueled by the printing of Arclight, Phoenix, and Runaway Steamkin. Now, there are some variants floating around. You know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if Young Pyromancer is in every list, but this certainly looks like one of the lists along those lines. And the general idea is that it plays out kind of like a burn deck with less redundancy and consistency in terms of just spells that put damage across, but more value in the long game in terms of, you know, some cards that can be bought back. Here's one of them. There's a couple jumpstart cards in the list. Maximize Velocity is one of them. Risk Factor is usually another. And Arclight Phoenix, of course, is something that will come out of the graveyard. So, yeah, this is a Runaway Red or a Arclight Red, you know, some deck along those lines. And Flame Jab is another one. Retrace is similar to Jumpstart, of course, just in terms of how it kind of fits into the deck. So we've got Flame Jab, we've got Maximize Velocity. Neither of these are good discard takes, in my opinion, because they can be cast from the graveyard anyway, plus they're a lot more underwhelming on their own. Monastery Swiftspear is never really a bad take against burn or burn-style decks, but we have Fatal Pushes and Abrupt Decays in hand to take care of that, so I think we should be looking at either Tormenting Voice, which is kind of like a Faithless Looting style card in this deck, you know, card selection plus fuel some of their graveyard shenanigans, or Young Pyromancer, whose value is legendary across multiple formats. Definitely a strong card. Very good against us. So I think those were the 2 options, Tormenting Voice or Young Pyromancer. I chose to take the Young Pyro. Might not have been necessary simply because we do have answers to it, including Liliana, the Last Hope, but I don't want to be in a position where they can play that card, later on in the game and follow it up with a bunch of spells before we can do anything about it. So we also weren't sure we were going to draw our third land on curve to play Liliana. If they do go turn 2 Young Pyro, that might not have been live. Of course, it is live now. So we're going to follow up with a Thoughtseize, and we see that they have drawn a Lava Spike. So, this is a quintessential burn card. Like I said, these new style mono red decks, they do have a lot in common with burn, so that's a realistic take there. But I chose to take away the Tormenting Voice here. We're just kind of taking away the cards that represent the most value over the course of a long game, because we do indeed play the long game. Now we're going to hold up the Fatal Push here simply because it might incentivize them to play out some spells that they might not otherwise play out just to get prowess triggers. So Maximize Velocity is a pretty good example here. +1/+1 and haste. Of course they might be able to buy this back at some point, but these are 2 things that don't really matter at all. Of course, because we're just going to push it. And then they're going to Lava Spike us. Sure, that makes sense. So we'll just go ahead. We're going to get a Swamp here. This draw of a Verdant Catacombs was pretty nice in the sense that it enabled us to be really painless with our fetches. We can still go get a green when we need to, but for now we'll just play out the Field of Ruin. Take up the Liliana, pass the turn. Alright, they're going to Lightning Bolt the Lily. Let's stay on top of what's in their hand. They're going to Lightning Bolt the Lily. And they're going to Flame Jab the Lily. Alright, they've got 1 card in hand, so they kind of 2-for-1 themselves. Flame Jab can be bought back, but of course not for free. They will be discarding a land in order to do that. So I guess no matter how you look at it, that will be 2-for-1ing themselves. And so, yeah, that's totally fine. If we're treating this like a burn-style matchup, she's not that high value anyway. That said, it does leave us bereft of a threat, or of any kind of permanent that's going to stick around. And get us recurring value, so that's not great, but so here I could have fired off the Inquisition. I maybe should have. I chose to hang on to it, though. There's a lot that they could have in hand that I would have whiffed on, and Bedlam Reveler is one of them. Bedlam Reveler is a very, very good card in the matchup. Obviously, Inquisition cannot take it. If this was Thoughtseize, I would have fired it off. Now, maybe I still should have fired it off. That is a debatable line. I will be the first one to admit that. But if they do have a Bedlam Reveler, it's very bad for us, but at least, they play the Reveler, they refill their hand, maybe they don't have a land they have to pass, then our Inquisition is going to certainly have a target. So, we'll see what happens. Looks like they're just going to pass. Okay. Now they've got 2 cards in hand, no land drop. I might be more incentivized to fire off the Inquisition now. We'll draw an Overgrown Tomb. I'm still just going to pass, though. I was playing it really cagey here. Again, that's even more debatable now. Alright, Faithless Looting, so some card selection incoming for the opponent. And this is where we get punished for losing our Liliana, right? And not having a threat in general. Like, if we had had a Tarmogoyf somewhere along here, this game would be so different. But for now, it's just kind of draw-go, The Faithless Looting is certainly allowing them to look for some more high-priority cards, and we are just kind of at the mercy of our top deck. These looting decks, unless they're combo-oriented and don't really have a value axis on which they compete, it's a sad truth, but the looting decks can sometimes outgrind us simply on the strength of the card selection from Faithless Looting. So, let's see what they are digging towards. Still not another land, and at this point I'm interested in thinning out the deck just a tad, so I will. Been holding up that fetch land for Tireless Tracker and other things. Revolt is potentially a thing as well, but we'll just go get an Overgrown Tomb, and now I'm interested in the Inquisition after they have sculpted their hand a little bit with Faithless Looting. They're going to bolt us in response, okay. Bedlam Reveler, alright, looks like they found one off the looting, so yeah, that's pretty bad for us, that's what we were kind of worried about. Abrupt Decay can't hit it, Inquisition can't hit it, and here it comes. The 3-4, yeah, 3-4 prowess, draw 3, seems okay. Ramanop Ruins is a little bit of reach for them, and a Swifty. Okay, we can at least answer that, so I'll go ahead and push that. Okay, Maelstrom Pulse is a timely draw. Definitely not mad to see that. So we get to answer the Reveler. We've answered the Swifty as well. So let's see what else they can rip off the top. Doesn't look like anything they're too interested in leading off with, so they will flash back a Faithless Looting. Pitching a Mountain and a Monomorphose and finding yet another Monastery Swift Spear. Okay, at least this is a card we can handle. They are empty-handed, but the draw of a Thoughtseize is very bad. We just really, really need to find a threat. Really need to find some kind of a permanent that sticks around. So here we're going to go ahead and take care of one of the Ramanop Ruins. And again, there's no need to hit this thing in our main phase. Yep, they'll loot. They'll get prowess. Ooh, they're going to loot away a Fiery Temper and an Arclight Phoenix. So the Phoenix is something that can eventually come back, obviously a core component of this deck, and Fiery Temper, just basically a lightning bolt with madness, so that is a pretty nice looting for them, I must say. So we're going to take the hit. We're down to 5. And I mean, that's the closest thing to a threat we've found since they took care of our last hope, so I guess it's better than some other things, but not entirely great. So, Liliana the Veil, okay, that's a reasonable one. A little late to the party, though, perhaps. We'll take her up. The Thoughtseize we simply cannot afford to cast. Again, this stuff's just kind of coming at the wrong time. If we had had this in the spot where we had Inquisition, they would have had no Bedlam Reveler. The game would be very different. But now it's just kind of a dead card. We can't go to 3 to cast it, so we'll just throw it away. We're still sandbagging this land here. Might want to... risk factor. That's pretty brutal. So, I'm very much somebody who would like to almost always take the 4 damage, right? I'm almost always interested in taking the 4 damage, but we're only at 5 life. I truly don't think we can. This was a pretty insane last card to have, you know, when they were empty-handed otherwise. But, yep, they get to just draw another 3. Pretty bad, so we'll go ahead and play that out. You know, we're looking pretty grim, though. Looking pretty grim. They've got another looting. They're just digging and digging. Pitch a mountain, pitch a looting that's so good for them to get rid of these unneeded cards. Lava Spike us, and Flame Jab us. And okay, double Arclight Phoenix. That's a little bit of what we call overkill. So yeah, you know, our opening hand looked great, and it didn't feel too bad when they had to 2-for-1 themselves to take care of our Liliana, the last hope. But as it turns out, that was the absolute right play for them, because we just went many turns. What was it? You know, 5, 6, maybe, 6 turns or so before we drew another threat, and even then it was just a Liliana of the Veil, who, while fantastic in general, and definitely not bad at all in this matchup, she just came at the wrong time. She just came too late. We were already too far behind, and yeah, you know, we just didn't draw a creature all game. We're at 41 cards, we went through a third of our deck, no creature. What are you going to do? You know, we interacted well. We kept pace with them despite some pretty bad top decks at some pretty bad times for a long time. But with no creature against a deck that gets value like this out of the graveyard and has a lot of ways to just churn through and see a ton of cards. I mean, they went through over half of their deck, so that there just shows you the difference. Yeah. Yep, we were never going to win that game without finding a threat that could stick around, so a little bit disappointing to drop a game like that. I feel a bit unlucky, but hey, you know, their deck did its thing. They put us under enough pressure that we kind of had to let them refuel the hand with that risk factor, and then it was pretty much all over from there. So anyway, good game. Let's go to game 2 and see how we do after siding. Alright, my friends, Game 2 against Arclight Red, Runaway Red, whatever you want to call it. I actually don't know if I want to call it Runaway Red because I haven't seen I don't think I saw a Runaway Steamkin for this whole series, so I might have to take a quick look at some deck lists and see whether, what the naming conventions are. Let's call it Arclight Red for now, and then we'll see what I end up titling the video. Anyway, let's just do the quick flyby sideboard here and see how people like it. So, generally with sideboarding, especially as it pertains to the highest priority sideboard cards, you want to treat this like burn. So most, if not all, of our Thoughtseizes and Dark Confidants will make way. Liliana the Last Hope is not great. I think you certainly are interested in cutting at least one if you have two main deck. Again, this all depends on the balance of your sideboard, but the general bad cards against burn are still bad here. And the general good cards against burn are still good here. So if you have Collective Brutalities, Kitchen Finks, Obstinate Bailoff, of course anything that gains you life, Kalitas, all that stuff is good. All that stuff comes in. The difference is in the fringe cards. So like Fulminator Mage is a card that might come in against burn if you don't have anything better to do. It's not bad, but it's not spectacular. It can trade with a lot of their stuff. It can maybe take them off of white. So Fulminator's fine. It's better than some actively bad cards, right? So here, instead of bringing in Fulminator in that lower tier priority slot, we are mostly interested in some kind of value-oriented Grave Hate like Nile Spellbomb. We are also more interested in cards like Maelstrom Pulse than we would be in the normal burn matchup. Again, Pulse is fine in the burn matchup. Again, it probably comes in just to get some bad cards out of your deck depending on your 75. But Pulse is a little bit more highly rated here simply because it's another thing that kills that Bedlam Reveler and all that. So yeah, that's the quick rundown of the sideboarding. Let me know what you guys think about that, and remember to vote in the video coming up this weekend for all the various ways in which we can shape the channel moving forward. Now, we have a nice balanced 3 lands to 4 spells. We don't see any sideboard tech, though. We don't see any direct life gain, so that's a bit of a bummer. Of course, Scavenging Ooze is going to be able to gain us some life and mess with their graveyard strategy if we are able to protect it and deploy it at the right time. So that's potentially really nice. We have Abrupt Decay to take care of their early stuff like Monastery Swiftspear, and most importantly, we have a big, beefy threat of the type that we lacked Game 1, which is a Tarmogoyf. And Tireless Tracker could prove pretty useful here going down the road. So, even though our hand is a little interaction light and doesn't have any sideboard cards, I think it is a keep. And we're, of course, going to take our opportunity to play that Shockland painlessly and see what our opponent has in store for us. Alright, Lava Spike to the face. Sure. Well, that's kind of a cool land. I didn't notice that before. Yeah, it seems fitting with the deck. I like it, I like it. Alright, so opponent passes to us. And we'll go ahead and fetch. We're going to get a forest to prioritize the Scavenging Ooze activations down the road. Also, we of course already have a swamp in hand, so double black's not an issue. And of course we had to fetch there to insulate Tarmogoyf from Lightning Bolt, or any other instant that deals 3 damage. So it looks like they're going to go with a Tormenting Voice, and so unlike Faithless Looting, they don't get to draw 2 then discard 2. They have to discard first and then they'll get to draw 2. But this deck has enough that they're pretty happy to discard no matter what the situation, and in this case it's going to be an Arclight Phoenix, so sure, fair enough. Tormenting Voice is good. We draw another Tarmogoyf. That's not too bad. It's not too bad at all. And in fact, we're just going to play it. This is going to be a Tarmogoyf game. I don't think we want to expose the Tireless Tracker here, even though it's not necessarily a matchup where we have a lot of time to crack a lot of clues. There's no need to, expose her early just for the sake of mana efficiency, especially because they could have something like Lightning Bolt in hand that they would not mind pointing at a creature, but they can't point at the Goyfs. I also think playing the Goyf there is better than holding up Abrupt Decay. We're on the play. Tarmogoyf is a wonderful card in this matchup. We just want to be proactive. They're going to loot. And they're going to pitch a Flame Jab and another looting. Okay. You got it. They're going to loot again. Oh, man. Okay, they pitch a Bedlam Reveler, and they pitch a Fiery Temper without having the mana open for it. So none of that seems very good for them, especially because they haven't developed their board. They have only grown our Tarmogoyfs. So it's going to come back to us. Wow. Yep, I don't mind if I do just get in for 8. You know, we have to respect the damage they can put out, but we are by far the aggressor here. And, yeah, I just chose to play out the Skoos. You could go either way here. Tracker into land would have been fine here. But I'm pretty happy to just go ahead and take away that Arclight Phoenix while I can. You know, yes, technically the Ooze is vulnerable here. It dies to a burn spell, but, like, they have bigger problems than the Ooze. So I just chose to eat something and put another proactive threat down on the board. You know, even if this all goes horribly wrong, we still gained a life, we still took away a Phoenix. But I don't see how it can really go too horribly wrong from here. They will bolt. Okay, fair enough. They'll Lava Spike us. Okay. They'll Lightning Bolt us. Sure. I mean, that's a lot of damage, don't get me wrong, but they are just dead on board. I guess they're just hoping we forget about our Treetop Village, but we will never forget about the Ape. The Ape has served us so well over the course of so many campaigns that we will never forget about the Ape Village, and the Loyal Apes will go ahead and join the pair of Tarmogoyfs for a nice, quick turn 5 kill against this deck, so that was great. That was night and day, by the way, between Game 1 and this. In Game 1, we had some pretty nice interaction, you know? Yeah, we had some awkward draws and some awkward spots, but our opening hand was honestly just fire, and we just didn't have a Tarmogoyf, basically. That was our biggest issue. Here, we had 2 Tarmogoyfs to make up for the 0 that we had in Game 1, and they were more than enough to put this game away really, really quickly. We still had a ton of gas in hand, but we did not need it. All we needed were the Goyfs, and yeah. They did the work for us in terms of growing the Tarmogoyf, of course. So Tarmogoyf is very, very good against burn. It is arguably even better here. So very happy to get that game too. Now, just like against burn, though, it might be a little bit tougher on the draw. So let's head over to Game 3 and see if we can win. Alright, my friends. Game 3 on the draw against this Arclight Phoenix mono red deck, and once more we are graced with a 3-land, 4-spell opening hand, and our curve is arguably even better here than it was last game. We're shaping up to go turn 1 Inquisition into a turn 2 Tarmogoyf that's big enough to survive any one of their spells, into potentially a turn 3 Liliana. That'll depend on a variety of things, including whether or not we have to shock this in and whether we feel that's warranted. But potentially T3 Liliana with trophy backup for the following turns. I love it. Once again, we're not seeing any sideboard tech, though. Would love to see Collective Brutality's Kitchen Finks cards like this. But as far as hands go, this is certainly above average. We're certainly not going to throw it back. And our opponent likes their 7 as well, so start us off, my friends. Start us off. It's going to be Mountain Pass. Alright, I can live with that. I'm glad they did not have a Swift Spear, that is for sure, with my hand here. So, Blooming Marsh into Inquisition. We see they have 3 lands, including Ramanop Ruins, and they have an Arclight Phoenix that will come back from the graveyard potentially at some point. They have a Faithless Looting that they chose not to play. That makes sense. Their hand is good enough that they probably want to take another draw step before they loot, right? Maybe they're also playing a little bit around some kind of graveyard hate, but I'm not sure if they can really afford to do that. Regardless, they did not loot. They're just passing. So they have looting in hand. They have Risk Factor as well, which is a really good card in the deck. And they have good old young Pyromancer, who's a really nice value engine. And just like we did in Game 1, we have to take the Pyro. Now, I think this is more of a nailed-on correct decision here than it was in Game 1. Again, Game 1, you can say, maybe we should leave the Pyro, plan to draw the third untapped land by the time we need to cast the Lily. If they play him on turn 2, we can cleanly answer him with the Lily, the last hope. So that was a debatable line when I took him Game 1. Here, I think it's the clear take. We don't have a good removal spell early for him, and they are on the play as well. So we would be forced to trophy and ramp them and not play our Goyf, and that's all pretty bad. So instead, they don't get a Pyro, they just get to loot. They'll loot away that Phoenix and that Mountain, and they will pass. And now, you know, our mana is still being a little bit awkward, but it is at least good enough to play this Tarmogoyf painlessly, so that is what we'll do. Turn 2 Tarmogoyf, we're very glad we got the window to play it. Now we can just go back to interacting. Like, now they have the problematic permanent on the board to deal with. Interesting. Eidolon of the Great Revel, so yet another overlapping piece with Burn. They have more cards in their deck that dodge this trigger. That is one thing that's worth noting. If they hardcast a Arclight Phoenix, no Eidolon trigger. If they play a Bedlam Reveler, of course, no Eidolon trigger. So definitely something worth noting, but otherwise it serves a very similar role in the deck. Right now it's taxing everything we're interested in doing. Ooh, Kitchen Finks is a heck of a draw. So what do we do here? Well, let's go ahead and get in with the Tarmogoyf. Alright. And here we have to take a little bit of pain for the first time. I think this is worth doing. So we take 4 damage here, which is pretty rough, but we have had a totally painless progression thus far. We have more painless, high-value lands still in hand to come. We've got the Kitchen Finks to make up some of this damage. I think we're just supposed to get this Eidolon off the field. Remember that if we don't get the Eidolon off the field, it's also going to continue attacking us. So it's not like we're not going to take any damage if we just pass there anyway. And, you know, Kitchen Finks was the other play. That was certainly a reasonable one as well. But I kind of like playing the Liliana. I don't mind ticking her up here. We have the redundant pieces. And, you know, ooh, Spellbomb's an interesting draw. We have some redundant lands. I don't mind ticking her up. And, of course, if we do, then she's able to even potentially just sit at 2, right? That's an option in this match. So let's go ahead and tick her up. Hissing Quagmire, I think, is the weakest card in our hand here. So we'll go ahead and pitch that. Alright, they will pitch a Bedlam Reveler. Again, we're getting the Revelers out of their hand. I don't mind that at all, that is for sure. So it's Tarmogoyf time. We are the aggressor here, yet again. Thanks to our turn 2 Tarmogoyf, we are putting them under a real amount of pressure. Alright, they're taking 4. And now it's time for the Kitchen Finks. Okay, they're going to risk factor us in a response. So I think it's pretty clear here that we just take the 4. We don't want them to refuel. What we have on board is going to be more than enough to really put the game away if they don't come up with something great soon. We have a 5/6 Tarmogoyf, we have a Lily sitting on 2, we have 2 pretty high value cards in hand, and we just played a Kitchen Finks. Recursive, life-gaining attacker or blocker. We have a Treetop Village. We have a whole lot. We don't want them to draw cards. We'll happily take the 4 there because we were at such a high life total to begin with. So, Tormenting Voice, pitching Fiery Temper. Alright, that's a good play. That's a nice value. That is for sure. They're going to pitch the Temper. It's going to go upstairs. We're down to 11. They play out a land and they will pass. Alright, we draw Field of Ruin. Yeah, not the highest value card in the matchup. The Ramanop Ruins is probably the only real utility land they play. Yeah, being able to hit that is fine, but we go to animate our Treetop Village, and our opponent just scoops it up. So, they must not have had anything too great in hand, but yeah, our plan was to animate Village there, and that's indeed what we did. I think the replay cuts it off a little bit sooner than it actually ended, but we animate the Village, we move to attacks. If our opponent has a Lightning Bolt and they bolt the Village, that's totally fine with me. They're down to 1 card in hand. We can even get it out of their hand with Liliana. We can play a Nile Spellbomb, sweep up their graveyard, redraw, trophy in hand. Oh man, it's all just so good. And so the best they could probably do there is bolt the Village and take 8. Like, they're just pretty much done for. Maybe a Bedlam Reveler might have helped them out, but they didn't seem to have one in hand, and even that we have an out to with we just edict it with Liliana, and that's all what they know about. Of course, we have the trophy in hand as well, so, opponent potentially could have played it out another turn or two, but I don't think they're coming back from this. I truly don't. We just kind of had a really commanding position. So yeah, Inquisition turn 1, taking away the young Pyromancer. That was actually really, really important here. Those elemental tokens could chump block the Tarmogoyf for days, and indeed the Goyf might have not been able to force the chump blocks early on for fear of taking one and then dying to a lightning bolt. I don't remember the exact state of the graveyards and the exact PT of the Tarmogoyf at various windows, but that Pyro would have been a big, big problem. But Inquisition did what Inquisition does, which is take away the linchpin of the opposing hand. So we took away the Pyro, and then they still had a lot of good stuff, right? They had the Phoenix, they had the looting, they were able to loot that away, or maybe Tormenting Voice that away, I don't remember. Find some gas, they found an Eidolon, all that's fine. But the turn 2 Tarmogoyf, having had the way cleared for it by our Inquisition, the Goyf, MVP yet again, just ending the game before they can really stabilize in the face of all of our interaction. Kitchen Finks, of course, nice supplementary attacker, nice buffer to our life total, all that good stuff. Nile Spellbomb would have been very relevant here, and Liliana was very, very good too. She took care of the Eidolon, ticked up, got a Bedlam Reveler out of their hand. I mean, that's all pretty good stuff. So, yeah, Game 1 was a little bit unfortunate. I also took a couple questionable lines. I don't think I made any plays that were actively bad, but I guess the biggest decision that if I could have gone back and changed would have been to leave the Pyro in their hand, hope they played it out on turn 2, and then we kill it with Liliana the last hope ticking up. Then maybe the texture of the game is different. I could have taken away a non-creature spell with my discard instead of that Pyro, and maybe that would have been just enough to get us going in that game. That said, we failed to draw any relevant permanent for basically the rest of the entire game, so maybe we were not fated to win that anyway. But Game 2, we just won on the backs of some really big Tarmogoyfs. Turn 2 Goyf, turn 3 Goyf, they just pretty much put the game away. And Game 3, we couldn't quite manage to deploy the double Goyf, but 1 was good enough. We had some sideboard cards making some appearances to kind of shore up our life total and our ability to control their graveyard. But yeah, honestly, it was the main deck cards really pulling the most weight. Inquisition, Goyf, Liliana, Treetop Village, all very good. All very good. So yeah, anyway, good games, well played to the opponent. These new red decks, I'm not the biggest fan of red as a color, as some of you might know by now. I don't know why. It's, I could perhaps explain that another day, but red is clearly my least favorite color in Modern. That said, these red decks, leveraging the best so-called Punisher card that we've seen so far, really, in the form of Risk Factor, incorporating some cool new printings like Arclight Phoenix. Yeah, I don't hate it. It's definitely an interesting take on mono red and on kind of a burn with a twist as far as archetypes go. So yeah, it's an interesting deck. You do see it a lot of places now. Variants like this are kind of popping up everywhere at the moment, but we seem to be at least decently positioned against them. It's a matchup we have to respect. they can certainly outgrind us with Revelers, with Faithless Looting, with a risk factor if we're at a low life total. Like, we've got to respect that. But against these Faithless Looting decks, the good old Tarmogoyf is an absolute terror against most of them, and is often the best card in the matchup, certainly the best card in the main deck a lot of the time. So always prioritize turn 2 Tarmogoyf whenever it is reasonable to do so in these types of matchups, in my opinion. Player draw, you really want the Goyf down there as soon as possible, as long as it's a window where they cannot just answer it on a 1-for-1 basis. That, if anything, is probably the key to success. So anyway, good games, well played to the opponent, like I said. And also, like I said, stay tuned to the channel. I've got more gameplay coming up as always, and I'll be trying to devise the most popular and desirable ways to kind of shape the channel moving forward. So keep an eye out for that video. Remember to vote. And as always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Feel free, if you're enjoying this content, to visit my Patreon page. Link is in the description below. And to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all so much for all of your support, all of your feedback. I truly appreciate it, and I hope you have a great night. I will see you for the next video.